Hello everyone, my name is Amma Trivedi and I welcome you all about the today's sessions. Today's session is about we will try to understand the anatomy of a project, available resources in the project folders. When we talk about the Unreal Engine, is a deep and the rich applications that can be used to create anything from 2D indie games to 3D AAA titles to interactive applications, architectural visualizations and VR experience. Unreal Engine 4 can create the content for the various platform ranging from PC and consoles to mobile and web-based HTML. The Unengine editor takes many of the complicated process of the development and put them into an easy to use developer applications environment. This lecture introduces you to the anatomy of a project and available resources. The goal of this lecture are to learn about the available resources, learn the basic anatomy of typical unengine blueprint project. By the end of this lecture, you will able to download a sample project, explain the basic anatomy of a typical project. The whatever screen you have seen over here, that is we call the Epic Game Launcher. There are many resources available to the user to starting with the Unreal Engine. The Epic Game Launchers manage your projects, give you access to the sample projects and the marketplace where you can purchase the content. It also provides the web links to the Epic community. The Epic Game community, once we'll go down over here, we are getting a lots of new features contained, modular game features, over 800 real engine highlights. So related to the new informations into Unreal Engine, community resources we have, blog we have. The Epic Game launches contain the community sections that offer news and the project spotlight as well as the link of the forums, blogs, engine development roadmap. Now Unreal, the learn sections over here, the learn tab we have. The learn section in the launcher provide link to the online documentations, video tutorials, project from the Epic Games in Unreal community. Marketplace. The marketplace has content for the sale organized in category ranging from art and sound to scripting and effects. In marketplace we are getting a different options. We have the home buttons, browse, browse by category, 2D assets, animations, blueprint, character, code plugin, epic contest, games. So many features are there. You can select as per your choice. When we click about the industries, we will get the more informations about the industries. So architecture, automotive transparent, here you can see you can download this asset as well from the marketplace. When we click on the free, here we can find Epic Game Contest, Mega Scan, free for month, permanently free collections, marketplace collections. So this is very useful. When we go to the Epic Game Launcher library, the library sections to keep a track of engine versions you have installed. If I want to download any other engine version, I just simply click on this plus sign and I need to select which versions I need to install in my computer. I'll just close this. Already you installed 5.0 and 4.2 6.2. The anatomy of the project we need to understand. After creating our project, after clicking on this launch button, I have just selected the third person game. Let me just open one more time. Once the project is created, the editor copies a collections of default folder file into the project folder. As already given you the informations about these tools into my previous sessions, please I request to all, if you want more information you can see my previous video. After creating our project, In create, the editor copy the collections of default folders and files into the project folder. Now project file structure. In the project file folder, you will find the following subfolders: config, content, intermediate, saved, right? You will also find a .up projects, .u projects file that define the parameters of the object, such as what versions of the engine to use to open the project. Now we'll see something about the more of the config folder. The config folder contains the default .ini file that I use to store project setting. Correct? Just here you can say configuration setting. We have this. We'll go back. Now content folder, I'll just go to my content folder. The content folder stores all the assets in the project that are either imported, migrated or created directly in the editor. The content folder typically contain the two file types. Third-person BPFL, I'll just go over here. Here you can see U asset file we have. When the file is imported, it's saved as u asset file regardless to the asset type. When the map is created, here we can see u map file is there. So this is about the content folder. Now we'll see more about intermediate folder. Here it is, intermediate folder. The intermediate folder stores the project working .ini setting preferences file. The folder is generated at the runtime and contains the temporary data that is required to make working in the editor faster. We'll see now save folder. If you see the save folder, the save folder stores file generated by engine at the runtime. These include the autosave and the backup file, as well as the screenshots, logs in the asset collections. The config folder here contains temporary .ini files that are used to store project setting. Now here you can see, once I'll open my project over here, if I'm grabbing a screenshot from this viewport options, when I'll just go down, here we have high resolution screenshots. If I'll click over here, screenshot size multiply, put it at default, just click on this screenshot. Now when seeing the screenshot windows, here I am able to see this is a screenshot which I have just did from my project, right? When starting a new project, you will need some assets to work with. Epic has already given you the ability to create a new project with the starter content. This is a great because it gets you up and running fast. As at some point you will need to bring your own content. Content can be imported into several ways. In this lectures, you will learn the common ways to bring into the new asset and migrate content from one project to another. You will also become acquainted with the reference viewer. The goal of this lectures: learn how to import asset, learn how to migrate content from one project to another. By the end of this lecture, you will able to import assets created in other applications, migrate content from one project to another. Now importing assets. Unreal Engine supports variety of the file types and importing contents. You can import content created in external editor. Common example: 3D Max or Maya for models, Photoshop for textures, and Audacity for the sound. Some of the most common file types in the asset types and some application they are associated with. When we specialists talk about the Maya, 3D Max, ZBrush, the file extension FBX or OBG. When we talk about the Photoshop, .bmp, .jpeg, .pcx, PNG, PSD, Targa or HDR. When we talk about Audacity, when we have to import the audio, WAV file format we need to follow. After Effects and Media Encoder .wmv file format. Excel .csv file format. Now we'll see some more about the content browser. If I'll just select, and there are many asset types are not imported but are created directly in the editor. Common examples are blueprint class, particle systems, materials in the material instance. If I'll go and just search over here, mesh, here you'll see I have not imported, this is already there. If I'll say material, here we can see, let me just maximize my view. So this all are already imported with the content browser, right? With the startup content, that options we have turned on during the our project setting, correct? Now importing assets, file organizations. Good file organization is important. Before importing content into the engine, you should organize your external files. If you ever need to check changes to the original assets, they can easily be updated or re-imported with the re-import command. Now, there are few ways to bring content into a project. I am showing you the two common way to import external content created in external applications. In content browser, just to me minimize this, just view. I'll just remove my type material, minimize. If I want to import anything, I'll just click on the add import over here and we have import to the game. Use the content browser clicking the import button or by the right click in the asset viewer and select an import to, or we can simply directly drag and drop to over here into the my content browser. That is another way. Importing asset icon in the content browser give you the information. Just open me the mesh. If I'll scroll my mouse over here, I am able to see the more informations about the static mesh. A small asterisk in the lower left corner of the asset icon tell you the asset has not been saved. Now if I'm created any new content over here, for an example, let me just create the one material. Here we can see this asterisk over here. That means we have not been saved. The file has not been saved. You must save import the asset from the return to the disk. Imported asset that you are not saved will disappear once the editor is closed. If I'll not save and close my engine, this asset which I have imported, this will not save. Press Ctrl save to all the assets, right click asset and the chosen to save. Importing into the content browser filter. There are more content you have in the project, the harder it can to find what you are looking for. At the top of the asset viewer in the content browser is a search area. This is the search area of the box in the filter tool. Both are relevant to the folder that is selected in the source panel. That is, they show only the what in the folder that is currently selected as well as its subfolder. You can select the content folder at the top in search box and filter tools apply to the content folder or to the subfolders. For an example, if I just want to click on the material, here you can see it will show me what material I have in my content browser. Again filters and just say click off that and select the this time particle system. Static mesh, here I am able to see the static mesh in the particle which is already there in my content browser. Now request all of you to create a new blank project with the starter content and to use an existing project. Create a new folder into the content browser, imported provided assets into the folder. Now importing asset, migrating content. Another way to add content to the project is to migrate it from the existing project. Migrating always you to move asset from one project to another. When you migrate the content, you also move asset dependency while maintaining the folder structure. Now migrate contents are there, like if I want to migrate this, just I'll select my object and I'll just go to my asset actions. Over here we have the migrate. In the content browser, select the asset you want to migrate, right click one of the selected assignment, go to the asset actors and select the migrate. If I'll just click here, I'm able to say save content. Now the asset report list of all the asset will be migrated to the target project. In the asset report pop-up, click OK. If I'll say save selected, this asset report, say OK. Now here is asking me where I want to do the migrate. I'll go my folders, Unreal Demo 1. I'll go to my content browser, content that is already there. So let me go to starter content and say select folder. The message will pop up, say OK. Content migration is completed successfully. Now we'll see importing assets, a reference viewer, right? Just let me select my mesh over here. If I'll select my object, the reference viewer shows the dependency for an asset. To see the asset references for an asset, right click to the content browser and select the reference viewer. Right click the selected object and say reference viewer. The shortcut keys Alt Shift R, click on this. Right here, if I double click over here, I am able to see the material dependency. Most assets are dependent on one or more other assets. For example, if you assign a material to the static mesh asset in the static mesh editor, the static mesh is now referencing the material. This means that when we static mesh asset is loaded, it also needed to load the reference material. In turn, material will load in the texture that have reference in the material editors. Just select on this. Click. I'm getting the more informations about my materials editor. Now moving asset to a new folder. When you move an asset to a new folder in the content browser, the editor updates asset references and dependency. You may be tempted to move the .u asset file around manually or copy them from one project to another using a window explorer. Although doing that technically works, it is not good practice because of the dependencies. You should always migrate content or make changes to the folder or file location in the content browser so editor can update dependencies. This lecture introduces you to the gameplay framework, which is the collection of C++ or the blueprint classes that manages the rules of your game, handles player input and defines the avatar, cameras, player HUDs and the unengine projects. Don't let the terminology fools you. While Unengine 4 has been developed to make a games and much of the terminology is game related. An engine can be used to make many different applications. The goal of these lectures are to become familiar with the gameplay framework, learn about the relationship between the game modes in the game instance, learn about the pawn, HUD, player controller, player state, game state classes. By the end of this lecture, you will able to discuss the gameplay framework, understand the relationship between the game mode and the game instance, understand the relationship between the pawn, HUD, player controller, player state and game state classes. Now pawn classes, HUD classes, player controller class, player state class, player game state class, game instance class. Now game mode class. The game mode class is the used to set the rules of the game and store all other classes that are needed to define the game's core functionality. The game node class is a good place to script response the system for the first person shooter or the timer of the racer game. Now game mode classes. You can assign the game mode to a project or which individual level in the project. Often projects have two or three game modes, right? But of course only one can be assigned as a default mode. Game mode cannot be changed once the level is loaded. Pawn class. A pawn class is a base class of all the actors that can control by the players or AI. A pawn is the physical representations of a player or the AI entity within the world. The pawn determines not only what the player or the AI entity looks like visually, but also how it interacts with the worlds in the terms of collision and other physical interaction. There are several classes that can be assigned to the default pawn class property in the game mode: pawn class, character class, vehicle class. A pawn class is a generic class for generating or creating the variety of the pawns type, while the character or the vehicle classes are set for the dealing within the specific but common pawns found in the most games. HUD class, heads up display, is the base object for displaying the 2D elements override the screen. Every human control player in the game has their own instance of the HUD class that draws to their individual viewport. In that case of a split screen multiplayer games, multiple viewports share the same screen, but each HUD still draws to its own viewport. The type or the class of the HUD to use is specified by the game mode being used. Player controller class. Player controller is the interface between the pawn and the human player controlling it. The player controller decides what to do, then issue commands to the pawn. For example, start crouching, jump. The player controller persists throughout the game, while the pawn can be transient. There are two types of the controller that classes: player controller and the AI controller. Every human player in a game has an instance of the player controller class assigned to them. Player inputs can be anything from mice and the keyboard or gamepads to touchscreen or Xbox. Player state class. A player state is a state of the participant in the game, such as a human player or the board that is simulating a player. Non-player AI that exists as a part of the game would not have the player state. Example, data could be appropriate in the player state includes the player name, score, or whether the player is currently carrying the flag in a CTF game. Player state for all the player exist all the machines unlike the player controller and can replicate freely to keep things in sync. Game state class. The game state contains the state of the game, which could include things like the list of the unconnected players, the score, where the pieces are in the chess games, or the list of what missions you have completed in an open world game. The game state exists on the server and all the clients and can replicate freely to keep AI machines up to date. Game instance class. The game instance is a class whose state within the switching of the level. Classes like game mode or the player control that destroy the level between, loads the resets and the data restore those classes is removed. Any data that you want to keep between the level, for example the player is health, ammo, overall score, should be placed in the game instance. So I request all the people who are watching this video, exercise they can do: create a new blank project with the starter content or use an existing project. In the content browser, use the add new button, add 3 game mode templates of your choice to the project. Assign one game mode of the default game mode under the project setting. Let's go to the settings and the project settings. Assign then play test each level and the verify each level uses the different game mode. I'll just try to game mode. So I'll end my video over here. Thank you so much, and I'll appreciate for your feedback. Thank you. Bye bye.